Welcome back. Today I want to talk about a subject which is very dear to my heart, and that is Lahiri Mahasaya's three knots. And I don't see these represented correctly anywhere. I see them mentioned in several places. There are some wonderful sources of information on Lahiri Mahasaya, and I'm going to have some links down below to some of those, but nobody represents these correctly. So we're going to fix that today. So traditionally, Lahiri Mahasaya's three knots. Number one, the tongue knot, which is a reference to Khechari Mudra. If Lahiri Mahasaya was going to teach Kriya Yoga Pranayama, he taught it in conjunction with Khechari Mudra. And this is evidenced in the oral tradition of the three knots. And the first knot is the tongue knot. That's a reference that he's asking you to try and do Khechari Mudra. Now, if you can't do the full Khechari Mudra, there is benefit just lifting the tongue to the roof of the mouth. There's benefit in just putting it back to the uvula. If you can touch the uvula, great, that's enough. If you can do the full Khechari, even better, much better. It will assist you like almost nothing else. Primarily important with Lahiri Mahasaya is his Kriya Yoga Pranayama technique. And second is Khechari Mudra. And third most important is the second and third Kriya. Those are the most important things when it comes to Lahiri Mahasaya's lineage. So the first knot, the tongue knot, is a reference to Khechari, but more importantly, what Khechari will give you. So we're going to talk about that in a second. The second knot is the heart knot, the unlocking of the heart knot. The third knot is all the way down to the base of the spine, the Coccyx knot. Those are Lahiri Mahasaya's three knots. Now, when Swami Dhirananda followed Yogananda to the West, they were best friends. And you can read about that in the autobiography of a yogi, the friendship between Mukunda and Jitendra. Those two were best of friends, and they were a dynamic duo. Yogananda was the very extroverted presenter, while Dhirananda was the introverted scientist. And the two were an amazing pair. So when Yogananda called Dhirananda and told him, I've set up on the West Coast and I want you to come, Dhirananda dropped everything, traveled. He'd already set up a center, he had members, they were coming every week, people were getting benefit, a lot of benefit, and he just dropped it. He dropped everything and he moved to the West Coast. He took up all the duties of the property that Yogananda wanted him to take care of. He started doing all the Sunday services, and every service, every talk that he gave was turned into a lesson that was the beginning of the Precepta, the lessons that Yogananda published. The majority of those were based on the Sunday lectures of Swami Dhirananda. So anytime one of those, if you're reading those lessons and you notice something is very scientific, you notice a very scientific bent to it, you can rest assured it's most likely the works of Swami Dhirananda. And in those early lessons, there's a reference to 4 stages of sense reversal. And this was Swami Dhirananda's reiteration of Lahiri Mahasaya's three knots. And the first one that he mentions is a tingling or a crawling sensation over the entire body, the whole skin. Now the thing is, what I mentioned is that whatever part of your body is the most relaxed, that's what you're going to notice first. Now some people notice this as a tingling, some people notice it as a pleasurable crawling through the skin. It's the energy reverting back through the nerves, and as it does, it creates a sensation. In the same way that when you relax deeply, the muscles lengthen and they send a signal to the brain that they are lengthening and you might be falling. They're not sure. They just send a signal to your brain and your brain interprets it that maybe I'm falling. So a lot of people feel in meditation like they're floating or like they're falling suddenly into a great expanse. And that is what's happening. They've stepped into some deep relaxation and the muscles have lengthened and let go. In the same way, as the energy moves backwards, it repents, that is to go backwards towards the brain. As it does so, it creates this tingling or crawling sensation. Another way that this can be felt is as numbness, as if the body becomes very numb. I used to feel it as if my outer body had become electrified and frozen, and inside it was empty. It was a very strange sensation, and I almost felt like I was an eggshell, and if I moved, I would crack that stillness, that eggshell of freeze that I was experiencing. And now, if you've been watching my videos, you know exactly what this is. This is the freeze response of the dorsal vagal nerve, and it's amazingly pleasurable to feel. You feel intensely, deeply relaxed. It's a glorious, wonderful, wonderful sensation. That's the first indicator that you are moving backwards into the spine, and don't miss it. It's amazing. The second indicator that you are reverting back to the spine is Lahiri Mahasaya's first knot. As you get khechari, the final khechari, the tongue goes up into the nasopharynx, and it goes up. You want it to go up into the sphenoid sinus. Touch there, and you're creating a connection between the sense organ of the tongue and the pituitary, which is on the other side of the sphenoid sinus. And as those two near each other, there's a current which is transferred, and that is, as it rushes down from the brain, that is the Amrita. It's an energy coming down from your brain, induced by the sense organ, one of the most, arguably the most powerful sense organ, your sense of taste. Food is most primary to us, right? So arguably this is the most important sense, and you're stuffing it right into your brain, creating an electrical connection, and that is the Amrita. It feels like a river of energy coming down. You can feel it on your tongue. If you're sensitive to taste, you might feel a taste, but it's not an actual thing to taste, you understand? It's an electrical signal coming back through your tongue to your brain, and your brain interprets it as a taste. So as all that takes place, you will feel a magnet, and you can feel it in one of two places. You might feel it here in the kutastha, which we know from following my channel. That's a mirror image of the medulla. So that's another place that you can feel it. You can feel it in the kutastha or in the medulla when you have that aha moment. Oh, now I get it, right? And what's the best way to feel the medulla? With correct posture, when the cervical vertebrae are stretched out. So that magnetic sensation, that pulling, your eyes will feel as if they're pulled up into your skull. And if it becomes too strong, if you feel it here in the spiritual eye and it becomes too strong, remember my words, remember the medulla, and just kind of suggest to that sensation that it go back into the medulla, and you'll feel it draw back into the medulla where it's very pleasurable and it's not so intense, if it happens to be intense for you. So that magnetic sensation, that pull, that is Lahiri Mahasaya's first knot, and it is the product of unraveling the tongue knot. Now the second knot is the heart knot. And Dhirananda describes describes it like this: the feeling of cool, warm sensation between the eyebrows, attended by the sound of Om, heard without closing the ears and felt all over the outer surface of the body and the inner lining of the body and the spine. So that's a lot, right? So you can feel a more intense sensation here, a cool and warm, perhaps at the spiritual eye. But the main thing is that it intensifies at the spiritual eye, and at the same time, the heart itself, I felt it in several ways. Sometimes it feels like the heart opens, sometimes it feels like the heart itself empties. But here's a big clue. He says the sound of Om is heard without plugging the ears. So when we do the Om meditation, which I have presented on this channel, when we do that, we are practicing a shortcut by plugging the ears in that manner. When you hear the Om or any of the spinal centers, you might not necessarily hear the Om, but any of the several spinal centers, if you hear the vibration of those nerves, which is going on constantly, but we're so busy out here that we don't notice it, right? When you hear those sounds, it's an indicator that the heart, that you've gotten to this level and the heart knot is beginning to unravel. It doesn't mean it's done. It means it's begun to unravel. It's a very big deal. You also may see light without pressing the eyes. So anytime you're meditating and you suddenly see, especially if it's a bluish light, but any light that you might see while you're meditating, or any sound that you hear suddenly from the several spinal centers, especially the Om, is an indicator that the heart knot is unraveling. And it will most likely be preceded by a sensation at the spiritual eye or the medulla of that pulling magnetic sensation. And very often this is missed, but pay attention to your whole skin and that tingling sensation, because that always precedes it. You don't have to pay attention to these, and so it's easy to skip them and not recognize what's going on inside of meditation. That's a lot of what this channel is about here. I want to help everyone recognize what's going on in meditation. And now, that last knot, Swami Dhirananda describes it this way: when the white light revolvingly increases like an aurora in the spiritual eye, that is the Coccyx knot. So you might see it here. It might be a circle of white light. And it's the experience of that spiral which is the unlocking of the Coccyx knot. The first time this happened to me, and many subsequent times, it felt like the whole world had been picked up and was spinning. So you can feel it in that kind of way. Then sometimes it's spiraled in front of me, in my spiritual eye, many, many times. But very often I felt, a couple times I felt like I was spinning. Sometimes the world felt like it was spinning. So it can happen in many different ways, but that archetypal spin is a big indicator that the Coccyx knot is unraveling. Again, it will be preceded by those three other sensations. So those are the three knots. Those are also the 4 stages of sense reversal, and I outlined those in my book, Hacking the Universe, from the notes from Swami Dhirananda. That was his huge contribution to you and I. He was a real genius and should have received the Nobel Prize for his work on the medulla oblongata at the university. Now I want you to take just a moment and think about what I just said. That tingling is the first stage of sense reversal. And that's exactly what I taught you all in the clinical mindfulness. Do you see? That technique is teaching you to go straight into the stages of sense reversal. They hook up together perfectly, and that means heart rate variability and the polyvagal theory and the use of the dorsal vagal nerve in meditation fits perfectly with the 3 knots of Lahiri Mahasaya. One flows into the other, and it's glorious. It is beautiful. And that's why clinical mindfulness, it's designed to help you recognize Lahiri Mahasaya's 3 knots, to get you in that gateway. So who cares about the end state? The end state will come of itself. The gate is the important part. You can look all over for the door in the ceiling and you'll never find it, because you have to adopt the right method and look for it in the wall. Okay, my friends, try out that clinical mindfulness. Remember how it goes into the 3 knots of Lahiri Mahasaya and the 4 stages of sense reversal from Swami Dhirananda. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time. And if you like this video, oh, you gotta check out this video. And then there's this one too. Alright? Take care.